you have some marriage function going on, and all of a sudden the marriage is over. You don't know what to do, right? And that is where Bhagavad Gita is going to definitely help us, getting back to these sessions. So I'm really excited to be back, and hope that's the same with you. Were you able to attend, some of you at least, online, the beautiful sessions that we had from Swamiji? Great, I can see some heads nodding. How are you doing, Shyamji? Radhe Radhe. Not able to hear, okay. All right, so I know it's 9 o'clock, so we can get started with our opening.
Radhe Radhe, all well.
Radhe Radhe.
Good.
Yeah, it seems like we are meeting after a while, so.
I thought we used to attend many sessions. Radhe Radhe. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are breaking off a little bit, but yes.
Okay now. I was there for sessions in the evening, morning.
Okay.
Swamiji used to describe about Gopi Geet. I made sure I was there for the 2 hours. The evening, 8 o'clock, and morning, 7:30.
Great.
I was there.
Wonderful. So let's get started. Good morning, good evening again, everyone. So today we will discuss a few things. I know we can't do a justice to this. We'll probably, when we get into bhakti, or we can intersperse it between our other sessions. But I'll talk about one of the key things that struck chord with me. There were so many, but one thing that I picked up, and then we can have a discussion around some of the things that all of us found like those aha moments during the sessions itself. But let's do a quick recap to revise the philosophy. I picked up the last shloka, 6.47 today. And that is what we're going to discuss a little bit today, and then get into some of the key learnings from the Gopi Geet session as well. So good morning, good evening, very warm welcome to all of you. Let's get started with our opening prayers by invoking the blessings of God and Guru. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. All right, good morning, good evening again, all of you. A very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. We are coming off a very, very beautiful devotional series on Gopi Geet and Bhagavad Gita. So we'll try to do some recap today for the benefit of participants who for some reason could not make it. And even otherwise, I think it's a good idea to recap some of the key concepts and have a good discussion around it to help those concepts go a little deeper. Today I picked up, this is what we are going to discuss today. What is the peak of devotion, and how can we derive inspiration from the Gopi Geet? Now, why do we need to derive inspiration? Right. Swamiji beautifully explained that when we have role models, it gives us a reason to set the benchmark for ourselves, somebody to look up to. And one of the reasons he quoted why post-independence India, took a nosedive with regards to, with regards to the way things were seen later on. It was the lack of role models. Previously, they used to have Subhash Chandra Bose, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and so many big personalities, role models to look up to. And after that, it became Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan, and all, right? All the heroines on the posters, and then there was a big gap with regards to the role models that you can emulate or model your life behind. So these are the couple of topics that we are going to discuss. So let's get it started with today's shloka. I picked up 6.47 today. We are on 4.23 going by the sequence, but today we'll pick up 6.47 because it will help us map the concepts, some of the concepts that Swamiji was talking about during the week-long series that we had. I've recited, and then you're welcome to follow along. योगिनामपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनान्तरात्मना श्रद्धवान् भजते यो माम् समे युक्ततमो मतः. All right. Whom do we have? Can see few hands. Who's our host? Co-host.
Radhe Radhe Ramya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Ramya. Go ahead.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Yogi namapi sarvesham matgatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktat tamo mataha. Thank you.
Wonderful. Very nice, Shri Ramya.
Radhe Radhe Sandhya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe Sandhya. Radhe.
योगिनामपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनान्तरात्मना श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां समे युक्ततमो मतः.
Wonderful, Sandhya. Very nice. All right. I can see a few more hands.
Radhe Radhe Sumesh ji.
Radhe Sumeshi.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Yogi namapi sarvesham muggatenantaratmana श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां समे युक्ततमो मतः.
Very
Radhe
nice,
Radhe.
Sumeshi. Radhe Radhe. Dinesh ji, it was so good meeting you in person at the family camp. So yeah.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Dinesh ji.
Yoginamapi sarvesham madgatenantaratmana saddhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktatamo matah.
Very
Radhe
nice,
Radhe.
Dinesh ji. Radhe Radhe. All right, we can take 3 more hands and then we'll get started.
Radhe Radhe Shyam ji.
Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe. Yogi namapi sarvesham madgatenantratmana shraddhavan bhajte yo mam samame yuktamo matah. Radhe
Wonderful,
Radhe.
Shyamji. Radhe Radhe. All right, couple more hands we have. We can take those.
Radhe Radhe Mehfil star performer Ashutosh ji.
Mehfil star performer. Very nice bhajan, Ashutosh ji. Wonderful. Please go ahead.
योगिनामपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनान्तरात्मना श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां समे युक्ततमो मतः.
Wonderful. Very nice. All right, let's take Venkatji, the last but not the least.
Radhe Radhe Venkat ji.
Radhe Radhe Rahul ji, Radhe Radhe Nitin ji. Yogi namapi sarvesham madgatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktatamo matah.
Wonderful, Venkatji. Very nice. So let's get started. So in the shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, very clearly saying, of all yogis whose minds are always absorbed in me, one who engage in devotion to me with great faith, them I consider to be the highest of all. Now, this is a perennial and an eternal debate that continues going on between people who follow different paths, right? Lord Krishna has laid this argument to rest. However, having said that, this will still continue. Okay, that is how we humans are. So this argument will still continue, but he's very clearly stated what does he consider. Now, Lord Krishna, he's giving us a lesson in humility here as well. He's saying, I consider. He's not saying, I'm telling you so it is. Now, if God is considering something or giving his opinion, right? Tamo mataha, mata, he's giving his own opinion or considering something, that I think we have a good reason to respect it, right? So let's get started. God's opinion has to be valued. He's humble, right? So but that's what he's telling. So let's look at it. Who's the star performer here, right? We always have who's the best of this. That is what basically Lord Krishna is explaining. whom he considers not best, I should say the highest of all. And there's a reason for that. There is a science behind it, and there is a logic to that as well. And that is what we are going to look at today. So who is the highest yogi? What are the options here like we have in KBC? The Karam Yogi, the one who look at the ritualistic aspect, not the Karam Yoga aspect of it that we're talking about. We are offering the fruits to God. Okay, let's not confuse. It's more around the ritualistic activities, the Karam kants that people do. Okay. Then obviously there are offshoots of Gyan Yoga like Ashtang Yoga, Hatha Yoga, all that stuff. That is another path for that. So are those the superior ones or the Bhakti Yogi? And Lord Krishna is, now we have different paths and they are bona fide paths. It's not like these paths are not bona fide. They are bona fide. They are called out in Bhagavad Gita. However, Lord Krishna is telling us that which one is the highest yogi amongst these. And even from a scriptural reference, if we look at it in 12th chapter also, Lord Arjun has asked this question very clearly to Lord Krishna, right? That one who worship the formless or the form, who amongst them is the superior one, right? He says that avyakta sakta chetasam klesha adhiktarastu isham avyakta sakta chetasam. Who is the superior amongst them? And Lord Krishna has answered that Gyan Marg for the embodied souls. We are embodied, right? We are not in the conception that we are a soul at this point. For them, Gyan Marg is increasingly difficult. And it is definitely not a recommended path in the age of Kali. Our scriptures are telling us, right? Even Ramayana says that Gyan Path Kripan Ki Dhara. It's like when you put one foot, the other one will get cut. You take that one, this one will get cut. So Bhakti Yoga is something which is the highest yogi, is what Lord Krishna is telling as well. Having said that, so that is amongst the yogi part of it. Now, people follow different path. Obviously, God is one, right? God doesn't, it's not that the God changes, that the God in Bible or God in Quran or God in Old Testament, God in New Testament, God in Shiv Puran, God in Vishnu Puran, God in Devi Puran, God in Bhagavad Gita, God in Bhagavad, they are different. They are all the same. A true devotee understands this is the same God that I'm worshipping, okay, who's in a different form right now. So that is the way to understand, which we have spoken about in depth in our previous sessions. So Bhakti Yogi is somebody who is the superior, the most superior or the highest among these yogis. Now we'll go into a bit of a science behind it. So what is the secret ingredient here? We see that when the food is prepared, somebody prepares and they are the only one who are able to prepare it the way it comes out. Sometimes we say, right, like mom, when she prepares food, the restaurant people cannot replicate that. So there's obviously a secret ingredient there. And what is that secret ingredient in all of these bona fide paths? Okay. Now, what Lord Krishna is saying, it is the yoga aspect of it. If you look at it, each thing is prefixed, not prefixed, suffixed with yoga. Karam yoga, Gyan yoga, Hatha yoga, Ashtang yoga, Bhakti yoga. And what is true yoga? Yoga is, which is bhakti. Bhakti is the secret ingredient in order for you to progress. See, you can continue to make progress. However, to reach that threshold that is needed to cross over Maya, the secret ingredient is bhakti. Even a Gyan Yogi has to become Sharanagat and do devotion in order to cross over Maya. So without bhakti, nothing is possible. Okay. Regardless of which path we follow, bhakti has to be mixed with it. And in Bhakti Yoga, what do? We do bhakti. What do we do bhakti for? To get more bhakti. And how do we get more bhakti? By doing more bhakti. What do we ask from God when we do bhakti? More bhakti. So bhakti is the means, bhakti is the end, and the bhakti is the way. And bhakti never ends. Right? Bhakti ki kabhi purnima nahi hoti. So bhakti is something that has to be mixed regardless of which path we follow. That is the essence that has to be understood. And if we are already on the path of devotion, feel blessed. Okay? That is the way to go. You don't have to first learn, unlearn, not unlearn, I would say, but then bring in those sanskars later on in the game. That too, if we have a good fortune of meeting a Rasik saint or a saint who's on the devotion path of devotion, who can tell us that the aim of the life is to surrender to God finally. So now you need to do that to cross over Maya. Okay, it will happen when you reach the peak of any of those paths. Otherwise, you will stop at siddhis, you will stop at knowledge, you'll not be able to overcome pride, and even the vidya aspect of Maya cannot be conquered, and because of that, you will never have absolute knowledge. Okay. So bhakti is the key, is what we have been discussing. Now, what is the cream of the cream? We spoke about the cream already. Bhakti is the cream of all the parts. What is the cream of the cream? Let's try to understand this concept through an analogy. You have this milk, then milk is milk, which is good. However, there is a potential for milk to, we can extract something more out of it. What is that? That's butter, right? You keep on collecting the cream, and then you can actually extract butter out of it. That is the potential of a milk. Actually, when you start collecting the cream, then you make butter out of it. Does it stop there? No. Now, furthermore, you can go on and get some clarified butter out of it as well. That potential is there in the milk. Now, ghee we don't see in milk, but we cannot negate at the same time that ghee does not exist there. Same thing when people negate that there is no God in this world, it's the same principle. Can you see ghee in water? No. There's a process to see that. Have you followed the process? No, have not. Then how can you negate that? So in order for us to get the essence of something, there's a process that has to be followed. Now, the cream of the cream, if you look at it, is this clarified butter. Okay, that's just an analogy. Similarly, the cream of the cream, we have reached up to the bhakti part of it, right? Bhakti is needed regardless of whichever path we follow. Now, what is the essence of bhakti? What is the topmost prize of bhakti that one can get? That is divine love. Okay? Divine love is the cream of the cream. And that is what we were talking about during our family camp, this concept. Now, no discussion of divine love is completed unless we discuss the other part of it as well, right? Let's look at the concept basically of divine love, refresh it a little bit. We'll get into a bit of a philosophy, not going to spend much time on it, but always helps to revise the philosophy so that we are all on the same page. Now, cream of the cream, we said, is divine love. It's just like extracting butter out of milk and then extracting the clarified butter out of that. Now let's go a little bit into the philosophy just to understand this. This is God. God is one. God is one entity. Everything else emanates from them. Kathopanishad says that it's like a spider. It weaves a web around it. How does it weave the web? Does it get the material from somewhere else? Goes and collects it and shops around and then creates it? No. It comes from its body. And where does it go after the web is not? It goes back into the body. Similarly, our Kathopanishad tells us God has three energies. The Maya energy, external energy, the Jiva Shakti, and the Swarupa Shakti. We are the Jiva Shakti aspect of God. So I'm getting into a bit of a philosophy just to look at divine love from another angle. Now, the Swarupa Shakti of God is the most potent out of these, okay? Which is also Satchit Anand, the components of this Swarupa Shakti, which is the superior energy of God. It has three components, Satchit and Anand. God is called Satchidanand, and Sat is enabled by his Sandhini Shakti. We don't have to get into too much detail here, but let's understand the essence that without Sat Shakti, God becomes a Nirakar Brahm, which Jnanis worship. Chit is the Samvit Shakti, which brings in the sweetness part of it, and Anand is the Ladini Shakti. Now, the source of Sat is Chit. You can call God Chidanand as well, like we had spoken about it, right? Satchidanand is already covered when you say God is Chidanand. Furthermore, if you simply call God Anand, that is also a complete definition of God. So the essence of the most superior energy of God, which is Swarupa Shakti, is Anand. And essence of Anand is his Ladini Shakti. And essence of that, this is the supreme power which gives us the divine bliss. Okay, and this divine bliss that we get is possible only through the path of devotion or bhakti, not through any other path. So bhakti has to be mixed regardless. So we get hung up in discussions around what is our duty, right? In this world, what is our dharma? So let's look at it in perspective once more, just so that it's clear, this concept is clear. So swadharma, it is our duty as an individual in accordance with the Vedas. That is what our dharma is. It has two parts to it. Apara dharma, which is the material duties or mundane duties for all of us. And then there is something called aparadharma, which is called spiritual duties. This is a lower dharma. This is a higher dharma. Now, we cannot simply jump to the higher dharma. There is a reason that lower dharma is created. Why it is created? Because the vast majority of mankind, we don't have the spiritual perspective as yet. We consider ourselves as this body, and the logical extensions of our body are relatives, family, friends, country, universe, planet, whatever, as a logical extension. So that is what interests our mind. So that is why, based on the station of life that we are in, scriptures have recommended this dharma. This dharma will enable us to purify our senses before we qualify for the higher dharma. However, it's not that it is an incremental or a sequential process, that only when you have perfected that, you start doing your higher dharma. You can actually bake it in your day-to-day life. That is what Karma Yoga is. And when you start discharging your duties toward a higher dharma, the lower dharma is automatically fulfilled. Okay? We feel guilty if we don't take care of our parents, okay, or our relatives, or let's say somebody at our family, if we neglect them. Swamiji beautifully explained, when you will have that awakening, you'll understand, you will feel guilty. We don't do enough for our divine or spiritual parents. That is also a duty. It's an obligatory duty of being a human. And the topmost duty, as you say, if you look at it, is to love and serve God with devotion. That is the topmost duty of a paradharma. Okay? And when we do that, again, I'll tie back the concept. We gain eligibility to attract His divine love, which is the topmost prize of God. Okay? So, when we consider ourselves a soul, when we start getting in touch with our reality, who we truly are, right? The more purer our heart becomes, antakaran becomes, the more this understanding or this knowledge starts deepening that we are more than this body-mind complex. We are neither this body, nor this mind, nor this intellect. We are much deeper. And at that time, the only dharma at that point for the soul is to engage in loving and serving God. That is the constitutional position of a soul. And when we do that, we attract God's highest bliss. In fact, if God has to, God actually guards this thing very, very nicely. Divine love is His topmost power, right? And when He gives that power to somebody, he becomes enslaved by his devotee. So now God will not become slave for you just like that. He will test you thoroughly. So He will give you all the bhukti rewards. He will give you mukti and all that stuff so that He is not indebted to you in any way. Now, only a true bhakt, true devotee whose tattva gyan is solid or who has come in contact or have had the grace of a Rasik saint will understand this concept. Otherwise, people will settle for bhukti. Right? Siddhis are also in material realm. People settle for siddhis. You are doing Kundalini Jagran, you are doing Kriya Yoga, you're harnessing the power of your mind. You can levitate in air, you can manifest things. You'll stop there. Or you may settle down for mukti, permanent, perpetual, simultaneous bliss, no obligation to come back to this world. You'll settle for that. So God said, all right, thank God, I'm not indebted to that. But divine bliss, in order to gain eligibility for that, see, we're going to make God His slave. Now, God is willing to become our slave. But before that, we have to prove we are willing to become His slave. Okay, that is how this thing goes. And the total selflessness, Nishkam Bhakti, when we get to that point, that is when we gain the eligibility for divine love. So let's get into a little bit of it, because no discussion is complete unless we have spoken about the role models for, the souls, Jivatmas, and other Atmas who have attracted God's grace to get the divine bliss. So let's look at this. Now, this is the fundamental principle. The love for God is enforced by all the religions, if you look at it, right? If you look at it, knowledge, it leads to faith. The reason Swamiji, see, he picked up two topics, extremely what do you call, divergent topics. One was focused on the heart of Bhagavatam, okay, and the other was the core philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. So one was capturing the heart, the other the mind. One pure knowledge, one the peak of knowledge. Right? People who open up Bhagavatam and directly read chapter 10 without understanding the principles around it will say what kind of a loafer Lord Krishna was. It is the same Lord Krishna who spoke Bhagavad Gita as well. So that is probably why he picked up two divergent topics, so that you understand, you're able to appreciate how knowledge leads to faith, proper knowledge, not a knowledge gained through informal channels. And then that faith would eventually lead us to love. For us to reach that, appreciate that Canto 10th, verse 19 to 33 that Swamiji picked up in Bhagavatam, we need to have a good grounding understanding of knowledge and the faith about who Lord Krishna is. And then once we develop with that loving, prayerful, and a pure heart, we'll be able to appreciate the depth of love or the divine love that gopis and Krishna they are talking about. And even in Ramayana, it says, Jane binu hoy na partiti, binu partiti hoy nahi priti. So knowledge is, you cannot underestimate the significance of knowledge on this path. Somebody says we only do devotion, we don't need knowledge. That is fine if you have sanskars and probably you have done enough knowledge gaining in the past. But then if without knowledge, this can be a treacherous path. You can fall down even from the level of Mahabhav Bhakti. That is where Tattva Gyan has to be rock solid and needs to be repeatedly contemplated. Now with love, what happens is now even if look at all religions, like it said, right? Bible also says God is love, love is God. Now with love, there are two possibilities, Sakam and Nishkam. And Nishkam is where the Tat Sukh Sukhitvam aspect comes. Narad Bhakti Darshan says, Swamiji spoke about, and the gopis are an embodiment or the role models for this concept. Tat Sukh Sukhitvam. In your happiness lies my happiness. Swamiji beautifully explained that this world is a distorted reflection of the spiritual realm. A distorted reflection. And that is why the things that are done here are actually looked down upon. Actually, when you purify it and perform those in spiritual realm, they are very deep things. The same thing you do here, like Lord Krishna and gopis, the exchanges that they are having, if you have it in this world without purity, because it is a distorted reflection of that, it will be like, okay, what kind of a thing it is. But in spiritual realm, they become very deep. Now, the difference there is, in spiritual realm, in Golok, everything is the Krishna is at the center of everything, right? Everything is directed towards Krishna for his happiness. Tat Sukh Sukhitvam. In material world, we are the center. We become the center of the universe. What is in it for me? So this is our catering to our self-interest, and what is happening in spiritual is catering to the interest of Krishna. Everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Tat Sukh Sukhitvam is the punchline there. Now, my personal favorite, there were a lot of them, but I wanted to narrate this one a little bit and then open it up, because I want to hear from you what were the key moments for you, because I know we have a hard stop at 10 today. We have a book club as well. So Gopi's dilemma, what to convey to Krishna. This actually symbolized it very nicely. The whole, if you have to really understand the thought process of gopis, what was going on in their head. So when Uddhav came to gopis and they were talking about it, finally it was time for Uddhav to leave. And this question came up, what should we tell, what is the message that Uddhav should communicate back to Krishna? Looking at the state of gopis, what they told Uddhav. So at that point, gopis came back, and so there was a set of gopis who told Uddhav, you have seen our state, how miserable we feel, being away from Krishna, the viyog that we are feeling, the pangs of separation that we are feeling, the leelas that we are just hanging on to, the pastimes that he did with us, and you've really understood it well. but don't tell it to Krishna. Okay, that is what gopis are saying. Why? Because he's very kind-hearted, right? His heart is like a butter, and it will give him pain. So even though we are pained, don't tell him that. Okay, so that is one set of the argument they presented. Now the second set of gopis, they had a divergent views. Now they came and said, if you do that, it may pain Krishna. That I spent so much of time at Braj, and these gopis have become stone-hearted. They did not even miss me, not even a single word, of that. So these gopis said, no, no, no. You go ahead and tell Krishna how pitiable, how miserable we are. Just tell him verbatim what we told you. He will feel, that gopis have not stopped missing me and stuff like that. So that was the second set of gopis. Now they have two divergent views. Then the third set of gopis came along. They said, no, no, no. The first argument had a merit. We may feel bad, we may not be able to take on that pain and feel really bad, how much gopis are missing me. So I think they said, right. So, but you are also right. So let's do one thing. You just don't say anything. Just stay quiet. Okay. So Uddhav said, then it will be even bigger disaster, right? It's like a surgeon comes back from a hospital room and your near and dear one was operated upon, and he comes out and you look at the doctor's or the surgeon's face and the surgeon is quiet. You may think, the patient has died, has passed away. So if Uddhav is quiet, then Krishna may think that gopis have left their life years. That can become very disastrous. And then Sri Radharani, she comes to the rescue. And what she says is a classic, it tells you basically the bhav that each one of them is having. She simply says, Uddhav, you do or you say whatever you want to say, but just make sure that Krishna's smile is intact, or you can only make it better or widen it. That's all. Now you figure out what to say. So that is the bhav these gopis had. I mean, difficult to understand. We can only visualize based on the little theory that gets into our head, but it like tat sukh sukhito, not even a trace of selfishness around anything for their own sake. Right? Krishna left Braj at the age of 11 years, 52 days, I believe, and gave 14 years. He went to Mathura, and then from there 100 years to Dwarka. So that much of separation he gave them, but they did not cover that 2 kilometers of distance to see Krishna, because they said that if he wants to, maybe it's in happiness that he is not coming here, so we will not, do anything that may disturb his happiness. So that much selfless they were at that point. So those were the souls, like Swamiji was saying, two categories or three categories. You can get into some categories of gopis, but the perfected souls were already there as part of gopis. The perfected souls, which are Nitya Siddh, we'll get into that some other session. And then the Vedic Rishas, the knowledge that we need, in order to understand the Sampurn Brahma, they actually descended down to understand God's true nature, because they only reveal knowledge, which is nearest, that don't give them the complete picture of God. So they also descended down on gopis. And then there were souls like us who would have perfected their Madhurya Bhav or were on the tipping point. They are also given an opportunity or a dry run or a simulation as part of God's Leelas to perfect their devotion and then be his associate in his eternal abode. So those were the three set of gopis that we had. So with that, let's open it up a little based on the discussion that we had and see what were your aha moments. Let's hear from you from the Gopi Geet series. There are so many. I'll keep bringing them in different sessions, bhakti sessions, and so many other things that Swamiji said, like wealth of information. But for today's topic, let's hear from participants. I know a lot of you had, attended. And if there are any questions you want to discuss, now we can do that as well. So I'll open it up. Yes, anybody? No hands raised so far? All right, I can see Sandhya has raised. Thank you, Sandhya, coming to the rescue. Please go ahead.
I mean, again, as you said, there were many aha moments. One that I just got reminded of from the Gopi Geet was this, that I think, if I'm getting it right, the highest form of gopis were the ones who knew about Krishna being almighty, but when they were truly in the love, they forgot that, and then they were experiencing the highest form of that emotion. So that was, I think, something that I really like. When you are truly into it, you even forget that the God is God, and you are enjoying a very personalized relation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's so true. Even in other bhavs, it is said that when you get into, there comes a stage where you forget. Like in Prem Shakti, Gyan Shakti melts away, fades away. So Prem Shakti actually overpowers the Gyan Shakti. So even the Das forgets who is the master, master forgets who is the Das, and they are like, and same thing with gopis, right? Even though they had the perfect knowledge, in love they forget, right? That beautiful Leela of Yashoda Maiya with Krishna, where Krishna has opened up his mouth.
Mitti khani.
Worried at that moment, right? Swamiji explained so beautifully that when God does his Leela, he has the power. Through his Yogamaya power, he makes himself forget as well. And the devotee forget as well. So they are actually doing that. They are in that Leela at that point. And Krishna was trembling with fear that, okay, now something is going to happen. But Aishwarya Shakti, like a good servant, came in mouth and showed that form to Yashoda Maiya. And then Krishna said, go away. So, under the sway of love, God is able to do things that he would otherwise never do, right? There's a beautiful bhajan from Maharaj Ji. He says, Nahi jat samadhin jogin te, nachat ta thai. Basically, he says that in yogis who have been performing austerities for millions and billions of years and tapasyas, he does not care to enter their samadhis, who are trying to visualize his form and hoping that one day the Sampurna Purushottam Brahm in his personal form will enter their samadhi. And they're striving for millions and millions and millions of years. And Krishna does not care to enter their samadhi. He only knows the criteria when to enter that. But for gopis, he's dancing to their tune. Now, lassi or buttermilk is not such an exotic drink that will make God dance, but he's dancing to their tunes. That is the power of love. Right? God says that I am Bhakta Paradhino. He's saying that I am actually under the sway of Bhakt. And Swamiji explained that concept so beautifully, right? It got revised that Sarupa Shakyanand, I think that's the term. There are two kinds of bliss God gets. One is he's himself blissful. He's made up of bliss. God is Satchitanand. So he's made up of bliss, and God's definition is Atmarati, Atmaram, and Atmakrida. He does not need anybody else to complete him or to entertain him or to make him feel more blissful or anything like that. Having said that, since he's made up of bliss himself, that is one bliss. But the bliss that God feels from the tasting the bliss in devotee's heart, not ordinary bliss of eating rasgulla and stuff like that. The bliss of a pure heart, when the devotee is experiencing the bliss of God and relishing that, God relishes that bliss, and that taste is even higher than his own bliss. That's a very deep concept. But so if we want to make God happy, we have to feel relish the bliss of God, and that will make him feel even better. So that is the concept. And that is what God does. When he does these leelas, he makes the devotees feel that and then relishes that bliss himself as well. Okay. Yes, Shri Ramya?
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
There were many incidents, as you said, like that, and even the bhajans and the kirtans, which really it will take you to a different level. Although I attended it online for a few minutes, but two stories which Swamiji told, which that got etched in my heart. One was on a laughing note. It like when Krishna got a calf, he sat on the calf and he got onto the table to take the butter, and the calf went away and he shouts, Maya, Maya. And Yashoda Maya comes and says, how do you get into such a position? I was imagining that, and I couldn't stop laughing, like how Krishna performs the pastimes. He forgets himself. If he remembers that he's God, he won't be able to do that. So he makes sure that he forgets. And one more story which I remember for a long time is the story of rains and farmers, where one farmer, he keeps plowing all the Indra says there will be no rain for 12 years. And then he'll tell that he's practicing. And Mother Parvati ji will tell Shiva that if you don't practice, wouldn't you forget to play the tamru? And that's how the rains come. So that story, like how much practice matters, like even gods themselves, like they wouldn't give up on their practice. Then where are we, at what level we are, then how can we let go of one day and all. So that a story I really like on the importance of practice. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you. Beautiful. I'm glad you remember that story. That was interesting actually. So the calf moves away and then mother catches him red-handed, right? And then the story that Krishna cooks up, very nice, right? She said, okay, why do I see butter here? He said, you put ornaments on me and they heat up and generate heat. So in order to cool it down, I had to put my hand into that pot. So then mother says, all right, that is fine. But why am I seeing it in your hair as well? So then he said, no, my hair are curly, they fell on my face, so I had to take them off. So that's a beautiful story for sure. Yes, Rahul.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
I still haven't watched the complete series, but I remember that in the opening lecture when Swamiji mentioned that this is the Mukut Mani, this adjective is very important. Mukut Mani of the ripened fruit of the scriptures. I think this sets the tone for the audience to watch the complete series.
Very true. Very, very true. See, it's like what Swamiji touched upon actually. First of all, scriptures. How many scriptures, Upanishads, Itihas, Puran, and everything that we have. Right? Body of literature itself is like, you can't even imagine how many lifetimes it can take somebody to read all the scriptures. So the ripened fruit of that scripture is called Bhagavatam. Right? It's like a sugar cane. If the sugar cane tree is there, what will be the ripened fruit of a sugar cane tree? It will be very sweet, of course, right? Although there is no such fruit. And that fruit is, and the Mukutumani of that fruit is the Canto 10. And that is what he was discussing and explaining. It is the thing, like the topmost prize of God is divine love. And the epitome or the zenith or the pinnacle of divine love are gopis. And the exchange that happened when Lord Krishna vanished, that is what he was explaining that. And that basically, that is the significance of Gopi Geet in context of its place in scriptures. Very true. But it was a beautiful narration. And then, see, I really like the fact, like I said, right, he picked up Bhagavad Gita on one side for people so that get your foundation, the knowledge right, first of all. Right? You have to, people say that, how can God be like that? People who simply read to Bhagavatam and start reading chapter 10, and then the same Krishna narrated Bhagavad Gita as well. So first understand the knowledge. What is the place of bhakti in this path? And then what is the stages in bhakti? And then what is the peak of bhakti? Right? And then what are the different possibilities in bhakti? And what is the top price of bhakti? And what are the possibilities in that top price? So there is so much of literature and foundation that goes behind that for us to understand that. Otherwise, with the material mind, we cannot comprehend these deep concepts. But what gopis are telling, and gopis were not ordinary women, cowherd women, right? They were participating in God's pastime, and they were like Nitya Siddha souls and Vedic Rijhas themselves, and perfected souls, like some of us probably. That is who gopis were. So it was really, really deep and profound. And even the chapter 6 that Swamiji picked up, it is beautiful. So much of wealth of information he provided in that, right? Concluding with who is the highest of yogis. So because we are on bhakti path, we should feel blessed and fortunate. Not everybody gets that opportunity. Krishna bhakti is anyway durlabh, and having bhakti sanskars and getting the right knowledge, it's a very, very rare combination. And if we get that, it's like we have hit a jackpot. Proper Tattva Gyan is very important, even on the marga of bhakti, because that will set the foundation. And then we can proceed with confidence without getting swayed with multiple opinions and theories, that keep on getting floated around. Great. All right.
Can I make a couple of announcements before we take up?
Sure. Yeah, now we can make a couple of announcements. We have.
I just wanted to add that JK Yog India from the Odisha ashram. They are having that 48-hour Akhand Sankirtan. So the link is there in the YouTube. If you guys would like to join, that is pretty nice Sankirtan. And then apart from that, Swamiji is still in US, and he has headed to the Bay Area temple where the Pran Pratishtha and I think the inauguration will be happening from July 4th to July 11th. And after that, he will be heading to LA, where he will be having this life transformation series from July 16th, I believe, to July 20th. Sorry, July 14th to July 20th. And then we have a cruise with Swamiji on July 16th, which is like a fundraiser for the underprivileged, the work for care. So all the links are posted in the chat box. Feel free to look into that.
Yeah, we have Pran Pratishtha. So if you are in around Bay Area, do check it out and make it. It's going to be a wonderful event. And a lot of people are traveling over to that, and you'll get the privilege to meet Swamiji in person and Minuji and a lot of wonderful devotees that we have from that area. So do check it out. And if you are able to make it, nothing like it. I wish I could have traveled, but there's only so many things, one can do. So I'll have to give it a pass this time, but we'll be present in spirit for sure. Now, Lord Krishna, just to give a sense of it, see, we get attracted towards material things. Right? We do get attracted. We have a cute little baby, we get attracted towards that. When we see somebody good or famous, we get attracted towards that. We see somebody successful, we get attracted towards that. Now, just imagine if Lord Krishna has taken a birth to give you that kind of a bliss. What would be that possibility? Just imagine, right? We do get attracted towards small baby. Now, if God Krishna has taken a birth to give Yashoda Maya the Vatsalya bliss, we can't even imagine what the possibilities are, right? So we know about SRK, right? What is RSK? RSK is Rasik Shiromani Krishna. He's the Ras Sindhu. So when he decides to give you bliss in a particular form, we can't even imagine, because he's the source of all the chota mota bliss that we see around. And we are talking about divine bliss. And that too, when God has decided to give you bliss, we can't imagine it. It's mind-blowing possibility around it. So yes, Ashaji, you wanted to add something?
I think before we take Ashaji, Nagendraji was having a question. Yeah, so
Yes,
let's,
Nagendraji, go ahead.
yeah, your voice is cutting off, Nagendraji. You might want to fix your audio.
You need to fix your audio, please do. And then we'll come back to you. The other part of it is the paradharma that we spoke about the soul, is the important one. We need to integrate it in our life so that we start building those sanskars. Otherwise, worldly matters will take away our mind space. Right? Now, we quote that, as part of our dharma, we need to do certain things. That is fine based on the station of life that we are in. If we are Kshatriya, we are defending our borders. Obviously, we have to focus on our duty. Having said that, Lord Krishna starts with that. He doesn't end at that. Okay? He tells Arjun, he starts with the basic thing. First, understand you are a soul. Then he gives him the first thing, you are a Kshatriya, and that is what your duty. And he goes on to tell him the Buddhi Yoga aspect of it and the science of work, how to perform your work. And finally, this whole journey, he ends at saying, Sarv Dharmam Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braj. He doesn't stop at that. He starts at that, and we should not stop at that only where he started. Okay, we have to look at the bigger picture around this concept as well. So performing our dharma is important because we are embodied souls. Having said that, that is not the full stop there. So the sooner we start imbibing the sanskars of paradharma, where we are attaching our mind to God and getting associated with a higher purpose and making those pursuits and inculcating the sanskars of developing faith and devotion towards God, the better off we will be in our lives as well, in all respects. Then we'll have better clarity around our duty as well at given point in time, in a given situation. Without that, it will become an intellectual speculation, just an intellectual gymnastic around which should be our perfect duty in a given situation for a time. So that is the whole idea. Yes, I saw Ashaji, you wanted to add something?
Radhe Radhe, Ashaji.
Radhe Radhe to everyone.
Ashaji.
I wanted to express my feeling about Gopi Geet and Family Cap online. I have no words for that feeling and experience, even online. Whenever I heard about that Gopi Git is going to be discussed by Swamiji, that was my most aha moment, because always I wish to know more about Gopi Gita. Nicely, Rajesh is explaining in his session. It's also incredible. But the स्वामी जी की तो बात ही कुछ और होती है हम सब के लिए, तो उनके लिए तो कोई है ही नहीं शब्द. तो ये बहुत सारी पूरा हर एक सेशन में मेरे लिए ऐसा था कि जो मिस नहीं करना चाहिए, और हो सके इतना 99% आई relished it. और उसके बारे में कुछ ज्यादा नहीं कह सकूंगी मैं, एहसास की बात है. और फिर क्या है कि जो अभी बताया कि पहले डिस्कस हुआ कि कृष्ण की जो लीलाएं मधुर मधुर, तो उसके बारे में मैं शॉर्ट में कहना चाहूंगी कि सूरदास का जो भजन है मेरा प्रिय है, मैं नहीं माखन खायो. जब पकड़े जाते हैं कृष्ण तो यशोदा जी कहती है कि माखन खाया तुमने, तो वो कहता है कि मैंने नहीं खाया, मैं नहीं माखन खाया. उसमें लास्ट में सूरदास जी इतना मधुर वो लाइन देते हैं कि जब मुंह पे लगा होता है कृष्ण का, जैसे अभी आपने कहा कि मुंह पे लगा होता है, ओठों पे लगा होता है, तो यशोदा जी कहती है नहीं खाया तो ये कैसे यहाँ आया. तो कृष्ण क्या बहाना बनाते हैं मधुर मधुर कि आपको नहीं पता है, ये सब ग्वाल बाल सब बैर परे हैं, मुझसे झगड़ा किया है, वो सब बैरी बने हैं, इसलिए मुझे दोषी ठहराने के लिए आपकी नजरों में उन्होंने मुंह पर बरबस मुंह पर लिपटाया, इसलिए ये मेरा माखन लगा, वरना मैंने नहीं खाया. फिर बाद में लास्ट में वो कहते हैं कि मैंने ही माखन खाया, मैंने नहीं खाया. दैट्स द नाइस. सबसे मधुर मधुर लीलाएं एक से बढ़कर एक कृष्ण जी की.
वेरी नाइस आशा जी,
थैंक यू.
आपका कृष्ण लीला का वर्णन बहुत ही मधुर था, और आपने जो गोपी गीत सत्रों को लेके अपने विचारों की अभिव्यक्ति की है वो भी बहुत बहुत ही मधुर थी. सो धन्यवाद उसके लिए.
थैंक यू.
और आप जो अपने हिंदी बोलने का अवसर प्रदान करती हैं उसके लिए बहुत धन्यवाद.
तो आप पैसे भी ले सकते हैं.
मौका नहीं मिलता इतना. धन्यवाद आशा जी. हाँ, बहुत ही अच्छे दो सेशन.
माय प्लेजर आल्सो.
Yeah, those sessions were really beautiful. Like I was saying, right, for the past 1 week it was like you go to a festival or a marriage or somewhere, right, and then when you come back you feel a sense of something is missing. That's exactly how it's happening. Same thing happens after a retreat as well, but these sessions were especially sweeter because we picked up a topic which was very devotional and full of ras, so to say. And in the association of Swamiji, it makes so much of a difference. So yeah.
एंड भगवत गीता के कितनी बार हमने ये चैप्टर सुना है, कर किया है, मगर जो स्वामी जी के मुंह से जो गीता चैप्टर 6 सुना, उसकी तो कोई बात ही अलग है. जैसे अभी जो कहते हैं ना, प्रेम में पूर्णिमा नहीं, तो हमारी प्यास की भी पूर्णिमा नहीं है उन सबको सुनने के लिए. ये बात. थैंक यू.
Thank you so much, Asha ji. And then I think he gave a lot of wealth of knowledge around chapter 6, which I'll keep on bringing in our sessions from time to time as we pick up some of these concepts. And the whole idea is to go back and forth and keep rehashing those concepts to an extent that at least fundamentally or the foundationally, we all have a good footing. That is the whole idea. And, if we continue basically doing this, I'm sure at least foundationally we should get most of our doubts sorted out, because those doubts are not good on this path, especially if we are trying to practice some of these concepts. Very nice. And one more thing he spoke about, maybe I'll build a graph around that in one of the sessions, right? There are 4 categories of people. We have time? Yeah, we do have. I'll quickly talk about that. So people who are here, not there. People who are there, not here. people who are here as well as there, and people are who are neither here nor there. Here is world and there is God, by the way. So there is very important. Here and there are very rare breed. People who are doing materially well off and still have some kind of an inspiration for God. That's a good combo. Right? It can happen probably with your past karmas and sanskars, where you have developed enough merit and dispassion, where you're born in a wealthy family and still have good spiritual sanskars, where you don't have to worry about food, clothing, and shelter and other problems around it. However, if you are here and not there, it is really bad. Right? That is where the most of the worldly people are. Here, not there, no interest in world and all those things, because that can wait. And if you are there and not here, it's really good. Yeah. Some of the people who are not well off or face material reversals, they start developing this passion or vairagya towards the world and more passion towards God, which is a good situation to be in. And neither here nor there, I don't know if it is possible. That is also a rare breed. They are complaining about the world and they have no interest in God, sorry. So we definitely need to avoid that quadrant, neither here and nor there. I can see some smiling faces. Maybe we can create some graph or quadrants around that. That was another concept he spoke about. And another concept that really it was important to understand is some of the relationships around Krishna, they were sambandh ragatmita, where they had a sense of entitlement. I'm your mother. So, that part was there a little bit. That's where we said that even Yashoda Maya did not get an entry in Maharashtra, because even her love had a bit tinge of selfishness or entitlement. I'm your mother. But gopis, they were completely selfless. They had absolutely no sense of entitlement. It's not like, hey, Krishna, the other day when I was going with my matki, you looked at me and you broke my thing, and then, we had an exchange, and now why are you not talking to me? No. They said, all right, whatever your happiness is, and that is where my happiness is. So that is what Swamiji was talking about. And within gopis also, there were three categories. He didn't dwell too much into it, but then if you look at gopis also had three gradations. One was Sadharani Rati, and then Samanjasya Rati, and then Samartha Rati. So his queens, all the Dwarka queens like Rukmini and all, who had heard a lot about Radha and gopis, they were in the second category, which is called Samanjasya Rati. 50% for self, 50% for Krishna. Right? That is where they gave hot milk to Radha ji first time when they met her. And then there was Sadharani Gatis only for their own self, like Kubja and all, right? And Samartha Rati were the highest level of gopis, totally for Krishna's sake, nothing for their sake at all. It's completely selfless, and that is the peak of devotion. All right. Anybody else? We have 3 minutes, so otherwise I will wrap up, and I'll see you next week on Monday. You can stay back for the book club. Yes, Ashutoshi.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Ashutosh, please go ahead.
Actually, I came across one kavita regarding to Sri Krishna's Janma.
Please go ahead. You are the poet and the composer of the month, Ashutoshi. Please go ahead.
No, I'm not actually. Some other kavi like Aman Aksharji, I think.
No, please go ahead.
Yes, for me. देह की परंपरा में नई सिलय का जन्म था, पहली बार भय के गर्भ से अभय का जन्म था। पापियों के लिए तो जैसे ये प्रलय का जन्म था, जन्म का समय नहीं था, ये समय का जन्म था। जन्म का समय नहीं था, ये समय का जन्म था। That's it.
Wonderful, Ashutoshi. I can see your inspiration and the motivation that you're getting these days is palpable. You can sense it. So just keep hanging on to it and keep it intact. That's so wonderful. Great.
Thank you. And one more thing, that one day actually we are talking about that means if you get Brahmananda, how we can get Premananda. I was reading Maharaj's Prem Ras Siddhant. So in that he has clearly mentioned that as long as you are in human body means after achieving Brahmanand, you can achieve Premanand. But after leaving the body, if you are merged with Paramatma is Madat, you cannot come from Brahman to Preman. Like that he has written.
Yeah, that's why it says that stay away from it, right? That is true. Na rahega baans, na bajegi bansuri. That happens for sure. Better to continue coming as human. We'll continue to discuss that concept. It's a deeper concept for sure. So I think we are clock at 10. So I'll hand it over to Ajay and Sunil Bhai for the next session, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Radhe Radhe, everyone.